My dear ones, lean closer, listen carefully. I want to share with you a story that has lived in the corners of my heart for many years. It is not just a tale about me, but a story about choices, betrayal, and the strange ways life makes us taste our own deeds. I warn you, this is not a children's fairy tale, nor a bedtime story filled with magic and laughter. No, this is the story of a mother, a woman who gave everything she had, only to be repaid in ways she never expected. And what followed, well, it shook the very ground I stood on. Before I begin, let me give a small disclaimer. This story is based on my personal life journey, shared only for reflection and understanding. It is not meant to target anyone, nor to cast judgment on all families. It is a narration filled with emotions, choices, and lessons. Listener discretion is advised, for at times my words may pierce the heart. Now, let me take you back. I was born and raised in a small, quiet town called River Mist. It was a place where the morning smelled of pine trees and the evenings whispered with the sound of the river touching the stones. Life there was simple, not grand, but filled with hard work and hope. I married young to a man named Harold. He was not perfect, but together we raised 2 sons, Benjamin and Thomas. To me, they were my world. Every breath I took was for them. I worked, I sacrificed, I stayed awake through long nights so they could have food, education, and dreams bigger than I ever imagined for myself. When their father passed away unexpectedly, I stood alone yet unbroken. My hands grew rough from working double shifts at the textile mill, and my back bent more each year, but I was proud. Proud that I never let them feel the emptiness of hunger or the weight of despair. You see, when you are a mother, you don't measure life by your comfort, but by the safety of your children. And I thought, foolishly perhaps, that such love would one day come back to me. But as the years went by, something changed. Benjamin, my elder, grew ambitious. He left Rivermist for the shining city of Westmere, where tall glass towers touched the sky. He seldom wrote, and when he did, his words felt cold, distant, like they had been written not by a son but by a stranger. Thomas, my younger, stayed closer, but he too had his own life, his own desires. I became like a shadow in their world, a memory they barely cared to revisit. I told myself it was natural. Children grow, they chase their own dreams. I tried not to complain, not to hold them back. But deep inside I longed for a call, a visit, even a gentle word. Do you know what it feels like when the very ones you gave your life to treat you as though you are nothing but an old forgotten page in a dusty book? That pain is heavier than any stone. One winter evening, I remember it so vividly, a storm rolled into Rivermist. The winds howled against my small wooden house, and the snow covered the land like a cruel blanket of silence. I sat by the fire holding onto the shawl I had knitted for Benjamin when he was 12. It still smelled faintly of the soap I had once used on his clothes. That night I whispered a prayer asking God, did I fail as a mother? Is this the reward for my devotion? My tears fell quietly, and only the fire bore witness. The months that followed grew harsher. My health began to weaken, my steps slower, my hands trembling. Yet still I heard nothing from my sons. Not a letter, not a visit. Until one day something happened that would change everything. It was spring when Benjamin returned to Rivermist, but he did not come with open arms or warmth, no. He came with demands. He wanted the land, the very house his father and I built brick by brick with sweat and sacrifice. He said he needed it for business, for expansion. He told me I was too old to live alone, that I should sell it and move into a small apartment in the city. Imagine, the house that carried my blood, my laughter, my memories, reduced to nothing but a property deal. When I refused, when I told him this house was my soul, his anger burned like wildfire. Harsh words cut deeper than any knife. You're selfish, he spat at me. You care more for walls than for your own family. Can you believe it? A son accusing his mother of selfishness after she had given him every breath of her life. I will never forget that moment. The boy I once carried in my arms, the child I once kissed goodnight, stood before me like a stranger with fire in his eyes and greed in his heart. Thomas tried to mediate, tried to calm his brother, but his silence weighed heavy too. Neither of them, not one, stood for me the way I had always stood for them. That night, after Benjamin left in rage, I sat alone in the house that now felt like a battlefield. My hands trembled, not just from age but from heartbreak. I realized, perhaps too late, that love can sometimes blind you. My dear ones, when I ended my story last, I told you of Benjamin's betrayal, of the cruel way he demanded the home that carried my soul. But stories, as life itself, do not freeze in a single moment. They unfold, they twist, and they return upon themselves in ways none of us can predict. What happened after that day was not just about me, but about Benjamin, about choices, and about how life teaches lessons no parent can. The days after Benjamin stormed out were quiet yet heavy. River mist bloomed into spring, but inside my chest winter remained. I busied myself with small things, watering the garden, mending clothes, polishing the old rocking chair Harold once loved, but every corner of the house whispered of betrayal. Sometimes I would hear children laughing outside and my heart would ache, for I too had once raised boys who laughed that way, boys who once thought their mother was their whole world. Months slipped by, and then one evening a knock came at my door. It was Thomas. His face was pale, his voice uncertain. "Mother," he said, "there is something you must know. Benjamin is not well." Not well? The words struck me like lightning. My eldest, strong and proud, who had left with a chest full of ambition, sick? I pressed Thomas for answers, and he finally confessed. Benjamin's business had collapsed. The grand offices in Westmere were gone. His partners had abandoned him, and the wealth he thought would last forever had crumbled into dust. And now, worse still, he had fallen ill, his body weakened, his spirit broken. For a long moment I felt a storm of emotions. Anger for his betrayal, sorrow for his suffering, confusion about what I should feel. But do you know what rose above it all? The unshakable love of a mother. It is a strange thing, my dear ones. A mother's heart does not measure sins as the world does. It breaks, it bends, but it never stops loving. When I finally saw Benjamin again, I almost did not recognize him. His shoulders drooped. His once bright eyes were clouded with shame. He looked at me, unable to speak, until finally he whispered, "Mother, forgive me." His voice cracked like a child's, trembling and small. He told me of the nights he had cried alone, of the way greed had blinded him, of the moment he realized that in chasing gold, he had lost the one treasure that mattered most, his family. Tears streamed down his face, and as I listened, my heart ached. I had waited so long for this moment, not to see him suffer, no, but to hear the truth spill from his lips, to hear the son I raised finally understand the depth of a mother's love. I held his hand, frail as it was, and I whispered back, "I forgive you, my son. But remember this, forgiveness does not erase the scars, it teaches us to carry them wisely." In the weeks that followed, Benjamin stayed with me in River Mist. For the first time in many years, he sat at my kitchen table, eating the simple meals I cooked. He walked with me by the river, where as a boy he once played with skipping stones. And slowly I saw a change in him, not the arrogant man from Westmere, but a humbled soul grateful for small mercies. Thomas too found his voice during this time. He apologized for his silence, for not standing up for me when I needed him most. And in those moments, though my body was tired and my years heavy, my heart felt lighter than it had in decades. My sons were finally learning what I had always prayed they would, that love and respect are worth more than wealth, more than ambition, more than anything the world can offer. Now, as I sit here telling you this story, I do not share it to paint myself as a saint, nor to condemn my sons forever. No, I tell it because it holds a truth that each of us must remember. Betrayal cuts deep, but repentance can heal. Pride destroys, but humility rebuilds. And above all, love, when it is true, endures beyond wounds, beyond anger, beyond time. So listen, my dear ones. If you have a mother, cherish her. If you have parents who gave their lives so you could stand taller, do not wait until regret eats at your soul. For the most precious gift we have is not the house, the land, or the gold. It is the bond of family, the beating heart that once carried us before we could even walk. Benjamin learned it too late, but he learned it all the same. And for that I am grateful. Grateful that in the twilight of my years I could still hold my sons close, not as strangers, but once more as the children of my heart. That, my dear ones, is the story I leave with you, a story not of despair, but of lessons. May it remind you that no betrayal is greater than love's ability to forgive, and no pride is stronger than the humility that follows a fall.